Hey family, welcome back to another video. We're gonna talk about guaranteed success when applying for the various kinds of visa at the US Embassy in Jamaica. Now, I have experience applying for 4 types of visa. I have applied for the visiting visa. I have applied for the J1 visa, that is when you work and travel. I've applied for a student visa, and also recently I've applied for a work visa. So in summary, today I'm going to talk about the B1, B2 visa, the J1 visa, the F1 visa, and the H1B visa processes. So stay tuned to find out what my experiences were when applying for these kinds of visa, and just some of the expectations that can, improve your chance of getting a yes instead of a no. Alright, so my first time to the Jamaican Embassy, I applied for a B1, B2 visa. Now at this time, I just finished college and I went with a cousin of mine who was also working as a nurse. So I don't know what was happening, but we thought it was a grand idea for both of us to do our interview at the same time. So both of us got the same interview date. We both went up to the same person at the window who was asking all of various kinds of questions. And man, that was not a good idea. All of the information for the different types of visa you can find at the KingstonUSEmbassy.gov page. I will put their link in the description below. It is important to note that questions may vary depending on the type of visa that you are applying for. Questions asked during the interview are chosen based on each applicant's individual situation. For the visiting visa, the B1, B2, they ask questions about what I did for work, who did we live with, and what was the purpose of our travel. When you are answering these questions, it's important to be as detailed as possible. If you just say, hey, I work as a nurse, I live with my cousin, I don't think that will be enough. It's important to give more details. So you could say, I work as a nurse at the Cornwall Regional Hospital and I've been working there for the past 7 years or something like that. So I think the more detail you give, the more they're able to kind of understand your background more than what is on the application. Now, I think a key thing that they're looking for when you are applying for the visiting visa is to ensure that you have ties to your home country. Basically, they want to ensure that you're not going to run off, so to speak, once you get the visa. So it's important to be prepared. One way of doing this is just knowing the address of where you're going to stay, the length of time that you're going to stay, the state, who you will be staying with, just as much information about your trip as possible, your purpose for travel. Because remember, the B1/B2 visa, you can travel for tourism, for business, or you could even travel for medical reasons. So again, the more information you give, the more likely that they will understand your background, and this will increase your chance of getting the visa. They're going to ask for specific kinds of documentation, and again, you can find the details of what you will need for these interviews in the description below. But they usually ask for your birth certificate. It is usually common for them to know how you're going to fund or support yourself once you're there. So a bank account or some kind of financial verification to prove that you are able to support yourself once you're there. The ties that you have to Jamaica. Say you're working and you get some time off or leave, you can show them your job letter to show that, hey, I've been working for this amount of time, and it's just a 2-week trip so I can visit family or so on. It's important to be relaxed, and make eye contact if possible. From my experience, they rarely look at you, to be honest. They are just like tipping on their computer and they ask the questions. But I think even if they're not looking at you, it's important to be confident and make eye contact. And again, you boost your confidence when you are prepared for the interview by having all of these kinds of documentations. All right. So that is it for the visiting visa. And again, for us, my mistake is that I went with my cousin. Both of us went to the same window and everything, and we were actually denied. I think they said that we were not qualified for a visa at this time. But I think at that time, I don't think we were as detailed in our responses as possible. So this is something that you can think about if you're applying for a visiting visa. So the other kind of visa is the J1 visa. Now this is when, for instance, you are at a university or tertiary institution and you want to go on a study abroad or work travel program. Now I did this process through an agency, unlike the visiting visa where I filled filled out the application on my own and went on my own and everything. At the time I was going to college, and there was this agency that worked with the university to have students work overseas in the summer and then return by the end of summer to continue with their school program. They usually have some affiliations with different kinds of jobs in the US. From my experience, they were working with different theme parks and hotels who are usually short-staffed in the summer. The likelihood, I would say, is higher when you work through an organization that they already have the reputation of the connections of a job, right? It's easier to get a job letter from the different organizations that they have been working with over the years that you can take with to the embassy. And in that job letter, it would say that the person's name will be working at this location for 3 months, 4 months, or so on. And there will be a stamp to verify that it is a legit business and all of that. If it is that you're doing it on your own, it's the same process in terms of you ensuring that the organization in the US, UK, or Canada that has hired you, that they will send you an official job offer letter. And in that letter, again, they will have the time period, the position, and all of that information. It is important that you take that with you because that's a very, very important part of the J1 visa that can secure your visa acceptance. One thing that they will do that I've noticed, they will only give you the visa for that particular period of time. As a student, if I had to go back year over year, they would only give it to me for that summer period. So, you would get it from May to August, for instance. Now, the next kind of visa now is the F1 visa. If it is that you get accepted into a university overseas, you would then get a letter from the university that verifies that you have been accepted into the program for a particular period of time. Now, for this visa, they may give it to you depending on the years of your study. If it's a 4-year program, if it is a 1-year program, if it is a 2-year program, and so on. During the interview process, they're going to expect that you're going to show proof of financial support. Now, this can be either your bank statement, or if it is that you have a sponsor, that person will be required to sign that letter of support along with their bank statement to verify that they will be the one to support you throughout that year, the years of your study, especially if it is that you did not get a scholarship. They're going to want to know how you're going to fund your tuition and all of that. The cool thing with this visa is that after your tenure as a student, you usually get 1 year of OPT. I don't remember what that OPT mean again. Sometimes universities will have a lot of career fairs in your particular major where you can meet different organizations that you may want to work with. That is the process that I went through. After my studies, I was able to work on my OPT for a year. In some cases, I won't say most cases, the employer, if it is an organization that is familiar with the immigration process, they may go a step further to sponsor your H1B, which is the visa that I'll be talking about next. As a student, when you are looking for jobs on your OPT, make sure that you are working for organizations that either have already done this before for other students or are familiar with the immigration process of international workers. Because if you choose someone or somewhere that has never done it before, more than likely they will not extend your visa beyond that 1 year. Now, for the H1B visa, as I mentioned before, it is usually an extension of your OPT period. So it's very important that if you want to work in the US, UK, or Canada, that you make a very good impression during that first year. After the first 3 to 6 months, you can actually start the process of the H1B with your employer so that your time does not run out or you're not out of status. The organization would usually pay for the different fees that are affiliated with the immigration process, or there have been cases where the applicant has to pay the different fees, right? It's important to know ahead of time if this is something that the organization is willing to do. Now, all of these fees range from $160 to $190 US, and you can find more information again in the description of the video. Now, the difference, as I mentioned, for these different visas, for the F1, you know that they're going to ask you questions related to, as I mentioned, how you're going to pay your tuition. They're going to ask about the major. Where you're going to live is always going to be a standard question, regardless of the visa that you are applying for. Where you're going to live, how you're going to support yourself, what is the purpose of your travel, or what is your major that you're planning to study, and all of that. For the H1B, it's very important that you get a job in the area of your study, right? Because then that will strengthen your case. You can't be studying, for instance, nursing and then find a job in construction or business. That will weaken your case. So it's very important that the job that you get is something that is affiliated with your major. All right. So these are just some little tips that you can think about when you are preparing for the various kinds of visa applications. If you want me to get into more details about any of these types of visa, be sure to comment below and I will be happy to share my experience or give more tips as is requested. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope that the information was useful to you, and we look forward to see you in the next video. Bye.